Hello everyone, welcome to our Viar360 webinar where we're going to take a look at a couple of product updates. Before we start, we're just going to give it a few more minutes and then we start. Hello Lara. Yeah, maybe this is also a good opportunity if you can just write in the chat if you can hear me all right. All right, perfect. Thanks for letting me know. So I think that we're ready to go. I mean, we're going to send out a recording of this webinar, so if anybody's a bit late, they can still catch the beginning. All right, perfect. Thanks for letting me know. All right. So, again, today with you, Viar360, and there's three things that we're going to cover today. The first one is the authoring update. I'm going to show you a bit more about what we're going to demonstrate today. The second one is going to be our rooms update. Here we're going to talk more about the final version of Viar360 rooms, or as, well, some people know it by its project name, which is group sessions. And then at the end, we're also going to check our roadmap review. We talked about it in our previous webinar, and we're just going to check where we are and what's next. So let's start with the authoring update. So I don't know if everybody here is familiar with Viar360, but I'm assuming that you are. I mean, if you're not, a lot of these things are gonna matter more once we do the demo. But for those of you who are, we're introducing a new feature called favorites. And favorites is really good when you want to reuse, when you want to quickly import hotspots that you use a lot, right? So there are certain elements that you're going to be reusing in different scenes. Favorites is now our system that basically allows you to save the content, like the content that you create within Viar360, and then import it to a scene somewhere else, right? In a different story or in a different or in the same story, it doesn't really matter. So this really speeds up authoring, the authoring process, right? So I use it a lot since we introduced it. It's been out there now for about a week or so, and I'm going to show you today how this works. The second thing that we worked a lot on is the question hotspot. Now, we received a lot of feedback over the last 2 months about it. Like, it became really popular. So we basically gathered all that, all those suggestions, and we basically decided, okay, we're just going to do a big upgrade and introduce a lot of these features that were requested, right? So a couple of things that we added with the question hotspot is the option to add multiple questions. So now you can add a sequence of questions. You can randomize answers, right? So it's basically, it kind of creates a little bit more difficulty for the trainee. The third one that was actually highly popular is add custom messaging, right? So when somebody, like if you do want to display messaging and somebody answers a question correctly or incorrectly, there's going to be a pop-up that's going to say some sort of a text that you're going to decide what it's going to be, right? The fourth one is we added a timer. So now you can actually define how much time a viewer has to actually answer a question. And the fifth one, I believe, that's the the UI upgrade, is the previewing of images, right? Before the images was rather small, now we added an option to basically enlarge them while you're answering the questions. I'm going to show you how that works. That's really cool. And the fourth one is we also upgraded auto transition, right? Auto transitions are great when you're building linear stories or when you're connecting multiple 360 media files together, and they basically allow you to trigger like an automatic transition from one scene to another, right? What we added recently was two options. One is that you can now define at what time the auto transition is going to get triggered. And the second thing that we added was also that you're able to define the landing time. The landing time basically means, you know, like when I go to the next scene, at what time should I start playing in the next scene, right? So you don't have to start from scratch, you can start at a specific time, right? Which kind of adds even more options for the authors. All right, so this is what was done. Now I'm going to show you how that looks like. So let me just switch here to my demo account. So I have a demo here that I'm going to show you. We're actually going to build a copy so I can then show you how this was built, right? So let's go here under stories. I'm going to go under webinar and July. And here we have my demo. Now, I want to show you first how this looks like and how this whole scene setup works, right? So this section here is taken from one of our customers' examples. It's a very short section, but basically there's a person, an instructor, that tells something a little bit about the theory. Then there's a quiz, a short quiz, and then basically we added an ending scene. In their case, it basically continues, right? But I think it's a good example for today to show you exactly, you know, what we've been doing with Viar360. So let's first take a look. So this is David. He's speaking in Slovenian, right? So whoever, for some people, this might be your first experience with Slovenian, so I'll let you enjoy that. But anyway, he's explaining here a little bit about this machine here. It's called Black Test Corner, and it's used to kind of test for any heat transfer from, you know, home appliances to, you know, furniture around us, right? This company does this test for a lot of big brand companies globally, and they're using this to train new students on how, not students, but new employees on how to actually use the device, right? So in this case, he's explaining what this is, he's explaining how much sensors there are and so on. And now the scene will transition to the actual quiz section, right? In this quiz section, this is actually a 360 image, right? But it does have a timeline, right? So I'm going to show you how to add this when we basically do the demo. Here you can see there was a question, and I didn't catch the time here, so it skipped to the next one. I'm going to answer this one, right? And the last one, if I remember correctly, this machine, I think it was 250. And I can also confirm this. And now the actual section here is going to disappear, and then an auto transition is going to happen, and this is our ending scene, right? From here you can either exit or you can go back to the beginning. Now this is very, it looks simple, but if you try to do this in any other authoring program, it becomes really complicated. We're dealing here with basically adding time to a 360 image, then adding an auto transition at the end, then adding questions inside that need to fade in and fade out at a specific time. And also the question sets there have basically a timer, you know, mixed answers, you know, they have to kind of, you have to be able to go through all of them or not, right, if you miss everything. But it looks relatively, let's say it can be relatively complex. Now with Viar360, it's really, really easy, right? And I'm going to show you how that's done. So I'm going to go back to my folder here. And we're going to create a new one. We're just going to call this one demo. I'm going to add my scenes here. And we need this, this, and this. So we have our scene number 1, scene number 2. I actually need to reorder this a little bit. So the titles here are just for demonstration, for visualization purposes. The way that it goes, I know by the naming that this is the video, so this needs to be first. I just need to go to properties here and switch to scene number 3. So scene number 3 will be my first one, right? And now when I go to edit this scene, right, we see here David, right? We're quickly going to add a point of view, so this defines the direction, right? I'm not going to add those floating text that you saw before. I'm just going to basically, you know, like, okay, this is one thing, right? I have you can see the stand of the 360 camera here, right? So let's say I want to use like an element that I'm using a lot, right? I'm going to show you how favorites works now. So if I would add something to the canvas here, so let's just make one info hotspot as an example. You're gonna see it here on the hotspot list, right? Now the hotspot list, like all the hotspots, now have this star option next to it, right? And this star option now basically allows you to save something as a favorite, right? Now if I save this, we are gonna see it under favorites, right? So we now basically, you know, the system stored it. It works on a global scale, so you know even other users can use it. You can use it in other stories and so on. But basically, it kind of creates like a library of your frequently used hotspots. Now, what I frequently use is this nadir. If I want to cover the bottom here, so I just need to go under favorites, and I need to add, put to scene, right? And it's going to add my circle here. I can just drag it up, drop it here, and that's it, right? And this is how favorites works, right? Basically, it allows you to really quickly save all the questions, all the hotspots, and so on. And it basically makes all the authoring process much smoother, much faster. Now, I don't need this demo here. I'm gonna delete this one. Right? Now, what happened like after this video, right at the end, I'm gonna add an auto transition, right? So when this video comes to the end, like when David finishes explaining what this is, right? We're gonna add basically an auto transition. So we're gonna basically enable this, and we're gonna transition at the 75th second, which is like end of the video, right? I could change this to, let's say, 30th second, and what this is going to do, it's gonna basically trigger the auto transition somewhere about here at 30th second instead of at the end, right? But let's say we want to keep it at the end, and I think we have to go to scene number 1. Let's just check. No, it's actually scene number 2. You can rename scenes, so you can basically, we can call this theory. And now it's going to be a bit easier to decide where we want to go. So I'm going to save this. So now we have an auto transition at the end, right? And we can switch to the second scene and create a multiple choice question, right? So in the second scene, if you want to create a multiple choice question, right? I'm gonna basically create one now. Question hotspot, right? And we're gonna say like demo question, right? And then let's add some questions, right? And we're gonna say, what's the capital of France? And we're gonna add two answers. We'll say Berlin, which is definitely not true. And we're gonna say Paris, which is true. Right, so regarding answers, what you can do is you can add an image next to the answer, right? You can add a transition. So if somebody answers with this answer, right, that transition is gonna trigger and that person is gonna be sent to whatever scene you define here, right? And the point, like, this really allows you to branch out stories, right? So if you're building complex scenarios where you want to define the path of the trainee based on the answer they give, right? This basically is the tool to use, right? You can ask them questions, see how much they remembered, and then if they remembered correctly, they'll finish at the right spot, right? If they miss some questions, they might need to repeat some parts of the training session, right? I'm just going to leave it as is. And then what we can also do is we can add a time limit, let's say 5 seconds, short answer. And then let's say in this case it's only two, there are only two answers, right? So I'm gonna turn on randomize, but it's not that useful in this case. But it is very helpful in the case that I showed you before, where you have multiple answers. So I'm gonna save this one. And we're gonna add another one. What's the capital of England? And we're gonna say here London. This is of course correct. And we're gonna add another one, say Madrid. And this one is not correct. All right, and then let's add here 10 seconds. All right, so we have this on, right? This is everything I'll do for now. I'm gonna click here, create. Now I'm gonna go under preview. And let's check what we did. So if I open this one, okay, what's the capital of France? It's Paris. And then what's the capital of England? It's London, right? Okay, and let's now do some customization, right? I said I'll show you how to add like custom pop-up messages. So you can here turn on this option to display results. If you turn this on, it basically, so this one is gonna show some, some response to the actual trainee, so they know how they did. This other two here, basically this one makes a question required. So it means that, you need to answer it. Otherwise, you're not able to proceed to different scenes, like you're not able to use hotspots and so on. And you can also choose to allow multiple answering, right? That would be some, if people are allowed to go many times through the same question set. I'm just going to leave here display results. And then in the advanced settings, I can actually change the button text here. And I'm going to say my final answer. And we're going to say here, yay, no, sorry, right? And there's two more options here that are used a lot. So this pause other media is gonna basically, if you're using this in a 360 video, right, and if this question is basically interacted with, it's gonna pause any other media that's playing in the background. You can also set it up to be start open, and start open means that it's gonna be open, right? So it's not gonna be a button that you need to open, but you're gonna see it open already when you enter the scene. And that's what we used in the previous section, and I'm actually going to use it here the same way in the previous example, I mean. So now if I go to preview here, all right, we already have it open, the time is running, I need to answer quickly. It's Paris, yeah, yay, I was correct. And then in the second question, right, what's the capital of England? You can see here my final answer. So this is something that we customized. That first message, when I was correct, I was customized. And here I'm answering incorrectly. No, sorry, right? And here you can then also see how much you answered correctly. All right, so I'll actually go back and I'll delete this one because this one is not so interesting. And now I'm gonna go, first thing that I'm actually gonna add here is I'm gonna add a timeline to this video, right? So I wanna make this video more dynamic, so I actually wanna add a timeline, right? And this timeline is gonna allow me to set up fade ins and fade outs, right? So I'm gonna set it up at 40 seconds, right? And then if I turn on a timeline, it means that, you know, the timeline can come to an end. So I can also set up an auto transition, right? And I can transition to my scene 1, which is actually my ending scene, at the 40th second, right? So this is how the auto transitions work. So I'm gonna say this one. So now we have a timeline. And now what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna go to my demo here, and I'm gonna go to this practice part. And because I don't want to recreate this entire question here, I'm just gonna go under hotspots, and I'm gonna save it to my favorites. And now I can close it. I need to close this one. I need to go back to my demo here, open my scene number 2 again, and now I have it under favorites, right? Let's check what you know, and add it in the scene. Now if I open it, you know, all the questions from before are here, right? I can see the advanced settings. I have this on. Start open. We're gonna just set up dynamic here, and we're gonna say I want this to show up at the 5th second, and I want it definitely to disappear at the 35th second. And this should give the viewer enough time to basically answer the questions, right? Otherwise it's gonna disappear and it's gonna take them to the ending scene, right? So we'll just save this, right? And now if we preview this, right, at the 5th second, it's gonna appear, right? We have it here. This is how you can actually, you know, preview the images, right? So this is something that I mentioned before that we added to questions, and I can show you here how this looks like. So here we actually added images next to every answer, right? And that basically allows you to preview it, right? So let me just show you this a little bit better. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna turn this off. We're gonna click here. Actually need to go here, and then in this first question I'm just gonna extend this to 30 seconds. Save it, and let's preview it again. All right, so now we have 30 seconds here. So if I go I think I need to save it again, or let me show you in my demo here, because this one was a little bit better prepared. Here we go. Right, so this is how you can enlarge the images and then answer the whatever you want to answer. But it usually works better if you don't have a timer on. All right, so let's see if there are any questions. Yeah, can the question change color when it has been selected or answered? You're not able to change the actual color of the answer, right? But you are able to add its styling here. Like if you wanna change some of the background, right, or the icons or so on. Like the actual buttons are not editable, but you can change the look and the color and transparency of the entire thing, right? And the second one was using a favorite, create a reference to the original element, or it's a copy of it? It's actually a copy of it. That's a great question. So what actually happens is that once you save something as a favorite, it's going to get stored to a separate list, right? So even if you delete the original, it's still going to be available, right? And then whenever you're inserting it from your favorites list, you're always going to be copying it to a new scene, right? So you actually have like an independent copy saved in your favorites, and then you're basically copying it to different scenes. And even if you delete the original and change it, your favorite is still not going to change, right? All right, so let me know if there's any more questions here. So this is what we try to show you today, is how much more powerful the question hotspot became. So you can add multiple questions, you can add multiple answers, you can randomize them, you can add a timer, you can make it fade in and fade out, you can add images next to answers, and then also kind of enlarge those images to view them before answering, right? You can also we also basically talked about how you can save stuff, right? So you can basically just mark it here as a star, and it's going to create your favorites, and these favorites can then be imported into the actual scene, right? And then under scene settings, you have the option now to add a timeline to a 360 image, which is very useful because you can make really, really cool experiences by just using 360 scenes, which are higher fidelity, right, higher resolution, and make it seem like it's same as a video, right? I would actually recommend, if you're using a 360, if you're using a relatively static environment, it makes more sense to use a 360 image with a timeline than a 360 video now. And the reason for that is because it consumes so much less data and delivers a high resolution. Okay, we have another question. Can we modify font size? Okay, I'm not sure if you're able to modify font size. I do think in some cases you can change the font, which font you want to use. There are a couple of options here, right? So if something looks a little bit too small, you can maybe switch to a different font that is a little bit easier to read. And of course you can add custom images, right? If you want to use something else than the system defaults, that also works pretty nice now. Yeah. So this was something that we really focused on over the last month or so, and I think now it's a pleasure to work with, right? Our developers really put in their time to really refine this. Make it flexible but still easy to use, right? And I believe it looks kind of great, right? And the last option here, maybe that might be interesting for some, is also you can set up something to open as pop-up, right? When something is opened as pop-up, it means that it's going to basically be an overlay over the screen. That might be sometimes useful if you're not using this in virtual reality. So this open as pop-up is more for somebody who's viewing it in panorama mode, and that's useful for whenever you want to kind of display something directly on the screen and not in space. So play around with that, see what it does, and see where you can use it. Okay, that was it regarding the authoring update. Then we are gonna touch now a little bit on our Viar360 rooms. So Viar360 rooms are also known as group sessions. That was our project name. In the end, we decided to kind of brand it as rooms because, you know, you're spawning rooms and people are joining rooms. And basically it allows you to create multiple user training sessions. It means that I can host a session that other trainees can join. We are connected over the audio. We see basically what others are seeing. We see what each of us is seeing in the scene, right? We can go through the experience together. Me as the instructor, I'm in charge of the session, right? And I can actually then, open pop-ups, answer content, show what's what, just basically guide somebody through the story. And once I'm ready to, I can hand over control, and then somebody else can try to repeat the process, right? So what we try to copy with Viar360 Room is the physical experience of doing role plays, like doing sales scenarios, or any kind of operation demonstrations where you want to kind of show what you need to be doing to a group of people. So we were piloting the feature with selected customers. Of course, everybody else also had the option to use it. It was in beta since March, and we're concluding our program on the 23rd this month. At that point, we're going to be releasing the final versions of the applications, and we're going to be supporting the bottom platform, so Android, iOS, Oculus Quest, and Windows. I'm gonna reference a little bit back to a couple of questions that I saw I skipped. Aurelian, you asked if there's a limit. No, there's no limit to how big is the scene. Like, if you're uploading a 360 video, our system is gonna transcode it anyway into different resolutions, right? And if you're uploading a 360 image, I think there is a limit, but I think it's like really high at 12,000 pixels width or 6,000 pixels width, something like that. So I'm not sure if it should be more than enough. All right, to go back to Viar360 Rooms, right? So I mentioned this is going to go live. What's really now, as it goes live, as it goes from the beta stage, we are going to offer it as a paid add-on, right? So you can still use Viar360 without this, but you can also decide to add an add-on, and it's going to be available to you. Now, if you are our current, if you're already our customer, right? If you're an existing Viar360 customer, you get this for free. So we really wanted to show how much we appreciate everybody who's been using our platform up to now, and also everybody who's going to join before 1st August, right? They're going to get this feature for free, right? So it's going to be free until you cancel your subscription, always available there. For anybody else, let's say if you would join after 1st August, right? It's going to cost $99 per month, and it's going to support up to 20 concurrent viewers, right? So it means you can run training sessions with up to 19 trainees, because the host is one, right? So you can add 19 other people to the actual session. If you need more, you have to talk to our sales, and they're going to try to set you up with a custom account at that point, right? But I think 20 concurrent viewers should be enough for anybody who's starting with this. And then if you're joining Viar360 after 1st September, then we're going to go with our final price, which is going to be $199 per month, right? And the same is going to support 20 concurrent viewers. And the same, at that point, if you're going to need more, just talk to sales, and they're going to basically set it up for you. If there are any questions about Viar360 Rooms, like we went through this in detail in one of our previous webinars. You can check that out on our YouTube page. We showed how it works, how it functions. We even made a demo. There's also a blog post about it if you want to read more in detail. But if there are any questions at this point, just let me know, and I'll try to answer them as soon as I see them in the chat. Now, the last thing here is that one thing that we want to talk about, that we usually talk about at the end of these webinars, is the roadmap. So this is actually a roadmap that we were looking at the beginning of June, I guess, yeah. And we bullet out, at that time we basically listed 4 items that we want to tackle this summer. And the first one was including a timeline in the editor. So we basically now allow you to add a timeline in 360 images, right? So that really makes a big difference, because it allows, it allows kind of the same functionalities and same interactions as you would be able to do on a 360 video. You can fade in, fade out elements. You can basically, make them dynamic, make them move around, right? So that's one part that I didn't touch today, because we also kind of did more of a deep dive last time. So you're able to now, when you're using a timeline, either it's a 360 video or a 360 image, if you make that object like a hotspot dynamic, you can set up fade-ins and fade-outs. So this is what I showed you today. But underneath that, there was also an option to create a path. And that path option actually allows you to basically set up like an animation path through which the actual hotspot or the content that you're trying to display is gonna move around, right? The second part here was this group section support expansion, right? So we mentioned that we're gonna at this point we're gonna support Oculus devices without Rift, then Android, iOS, and Windows. So Windows is basically a player that you can download to your desktop or your laptop, and then just run it from there and use the group session feature, right? So it doesn't require a VR headset. The Oculus ones, of course, do. And for the Android and iOS, you can choose to either join as in panorama mode, or if you have Google Cardboard, you can also use that as well. We are going to add other platforms later on, but these are the ones that we're going to start with. The third point here is we basically mentioned that you're going to be able to add multiple 360 media in a scene, right? So we were thinking that you would add multiple 360 images in one scene, but in the end, what we discovered, and this was also confirmed by some of our users, that this option already exists by setting up auto transitions, right? So instead of adding, let's say, 5 images, 360 images into one scene, you can just set up 5 different scenes and then just set up auto transitions to go from one scene to the other. And then you can create a relatively passive, linear story that trainees can go through, right? But I think this feature was kind of resolved with basically auto transitions and adding a timeline to 360 images. Now the last thing that we are still gonna tackle by the end of this summer, right, is elements. And elements are items that we are well, let me just go here to the next slide. Elements are basically items that are going to allow you to create content to reach 360 scenes, right? So this is stuff like adding 3D models inside your 360 scenes. So you could basically grab, let's say, I think it's an OBJ file with textures, add it inside your 360 scene, position it, and then make it seem as part of the scene, right? So this is something that's from technical standpoint of view, it's difficult, but we're hoping to get this done by the end of summer. I think it's going to add it's going to add a lot of interesting options to the actual 360 to when you're building content with Viar360. Because think about it, you can basically you can take a blank 360 image or a video of a room and then just place items inside, right? So you could kind of customize your environments without basically always having to go and shoot new 360-degree video, right? You can just kind of, you want to add a hospital bed, you just add it in that scene. You want to add like a whiteboard, right? You just add it as a 3D element, right? So I think these 3D models incorporation is going to add a lot of creative options for users that know how to use it. The second one is adding more canvas media options. Like right now you already have two options. You can either add like a single static image or static text, right? The ones that we're thinking to also include is basically, add some sort of symbols, or add some sort of videos that would be kind of natively inside the 360 canvas. Right now you can do this through 360 through the video hotspot, but we're going to try to see if we can kind of integrate it a little bit more natively so it would look more as part of the scene. And then that also, if we can conclude all of this by the end of the summer, we then have really good foundations for building more advanced complex interactions. But I think even at this point, Viar360 does offer a lot of options. So there's a lot of settings that you can play with, and our testers can definitely confirm that. In QA, they have a very long list of what they need to always go through before something can go live. And that's about it. Are there still any questions that I can answer? Okay, we do have some questions. Can the elements use as virtual staging? Yeah. That's what I was trying to say, right? You could then, if you have the right 3D models, you can basically stage out a whole scene, right? It's not gonna look the same as if you would be using like a 3D modeling software like Blender or something else, right, where you can actually add it spatially, right? You're just going to be adding 3D models inside your 360 scene, right? And 360 scenes are kind of 2.5D, right? They don't have full freedom of movement, right? So, but you're going to be able to do virtual staging as well. Sarah, that's one of the that's something that we've been thinking about a lot, like how to offer some sort of templating system that users can use. Like the question here is like, can you build, are we going to be building a library of images that would be either for sale or even free to use, right? So you can start building your content quickly. It is something that we're thinking about, but the number of use cases that you have to cover, like when we're looking at what our customers are building, right? It's so vast that we kind of need to nail down what are those core components that you need, that everybody's going to need, right? So as soon as we're going to define that, then we can start looking for some sort of building some sort of a system that's going to allow you to basically start using content from some sort of pre-built libraries or templates or something like that. So it is something we have in mind, but we're not talking about it yet because we're still focused on our summer roadmap, but it's definitely something that we want to tackle in the future. Tommaso, I'm not sure what you were asking. Which content do you mean, if it's in 360 and it's already available? And if anybody else has any questions, please just write them in the chat window, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. If any of you have any more detailed, if any of you need more detailed answers, you can reach out to me over my email, or just use our support email, support@viar360.com, and somebody from our team will get back to you as soon as they can. All right, I'll wait a little bit more if there are any additional questions. Otherwise, we're gonna finish this webinar, which was pretty great. We finished on time. We showed all the features. I hope you guys liked them. We talked about rooms. We talked about the roadmap, what's still on there. We are gonna be we do have a lot of holidays coming up in August. In Europe, there's this. You usually use this. It's called collective holidays, when most of the company is kind of going around and relaxing. So we are planning to have that as well. So we are going to be in a bit of a smaller team, but we're still going to try to push it as hard as we can. All right, thank you guys. It was a pleasure, and we'll talk again in the next one. Take care. Oh, Jesus is asking, is there any way you integrate it with LMSs? Yeah, we already integrated with LMSs. You can export any Viar360 story as a SCORM compliant zip folder, and then you can actually upload that to your LMS. Oh, Tommaso, I see now. You're asking if the 3D is already enabled. It's not enabled yet. It's one of the next items on our list, on our roadmap list. So we're going to be adding that hopefully by the end of the summer. All right. I guess that's it. Take care, guys. Bye.